Okay, so good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny Committee of Melton Borough Council. I'm Mike Brown, Chair of the Scrutiny Committee. I'll run through the normal housekeeping items. As there are no members of the public here, though, I'll take it as read that people know the evacuation procedures, etc. Just to remind you that the meeting is to be recorded as usual. And I would ask everybody to switch off their phones if they have them with them. There are a number of officers in attendance tonight. There's Director for Housing and Communities, Michelle Howard, to my right. The Director for Place and Prosperity, Lydia Ruslin, who will be presenting one of the items here. The Assistant Director for Housing, Quality Development and Landlord Services, Chris Flannery. You have the longest job title, Chris. Actually, I'm not sure. Assistant Director for Regeneration and UK SPF Delivery, Lee Byrne. I think it's a tie. And Democratic Services Officer, Helen Ainge, to my left. Just before we get on to the agenda, I'll just remind people that this is a special day. It is, in fact, the 37th birthday of my eldest son. I'd like to take the opportunity, as I forgot to mention it earlier today, to wish him a happy birthday. I've ordered him a copy of a book called How to Be an Adult. I might read it first before I pass it on to him. It is, of course, also St. George's Day and the anniversary of the birth of William Shakespeare. So 3 reasons to celebrate. Okay, I'll move on to the agenda. Firstly, apologies for absence. We have apologies from Councillors Lumley and Pritchett and Sharp. Yeah. Okay, minutes of the last meeting. To confirm the minutes of the scrutiny meeting held on the 17th of March 2026. Before moving to confirm the minutes, are there any issues relating to the accuracy of the minutes that members wish to raise? Councillor Gordon.
Yes, thank you. It's on the last paragraph on page 4 through to the second paragraph on page 5. It says that in response to the query on whether the council has learned from the cyber attacks on M&S and Jaguar Land Rover, it was explained that officers would probably never know how the attacks happened, but assured members that officers are doing what it can to ensure that the council's IT systems are secure, which is great. But it's got the next paragraph, it was recognised that cyber security is a difficult area to have performance indicators, so they were welcomed. I'm not sure what they were welcomed, if that could be more clarified in the minutes. I thought I'd read it all so that you get the gist of what I was saying. Can you see that?
I'm looking at it. I can see it. I don't have a suggestion to make.
No.
Because I can't recall in detail the discussion that took place and whether there was something further said regarding performance indicators. I think the best we can do is take that back because obviously the officers who were here to present on cyber security aren't here tonight. So we can make a note to take that back. But I don't think. Unless somebody remembers something more than I do from the discussion. I don't propose to amend the minutes on that, but point noted. Thank you. Any other matters relating to the accuracy or content of the minutes? Okay, could I have a proposer and a seconder to approve the minutes, please? Councillor Holmes proposed, Councillor Thwaite seconded. Yeah.
Sorry about this. Yeah, so that can be rectified for next time. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, show of hands, please. Those in favour of approving the minutes. Thank you. The minutes are approved. I'll get round to signing them shortly, Alan. Item 3 on the agenda is the response tracker. There was just, sorry, I've got to scroll round to it. There was just one item on the response tracker. And in fact, the member who raised this isn't here tonight, so I would normally ask the committee member who'd raised it whether they were satisfied with what the response tracker is now saying. But as he's not, I think we just have to note what's said there. the matter continues to be reviewed, doesn't it? Okay, that was the only item on the response tracker. Can I move to declarations of interest? Are there any declarations members need to make in respect of the business to be conducted tonight? Councillor Gordon.
Yes, I am a council flat tenant, but it won't make any difference tonight with what's on the report. And I've been advised that I can stay in and participate.
Yep, thank you for that. I mean, of course, we're not a decision-making committee. I think we've mentioned this before in respect of items that are under scrutiny. So
I can remember actually when the
sorry,
oh, sorry.
Yeah. So we're not. So I'm quite content that it's okay for you to remain here tonight. Councillor Webster, you indicated.
Yeah, I think I might have a problem. Well, not a problem, but item 9, not lot 9. Stockyard project update. Obviously, we've been still in the town estate, and obviously the land there is half town estate, half council. I don't know whether I've got any interest there. Other meetings I've had to come out sometimes I can stay in. I don't know quite where I fit in that.
But you're declaring interest in respect of your membership of the town estate.
The town estate who own the
It's complicated
9-year lease on the land.
Whether Lydia Rusling can offer some guidance on that.
There's nothing that we're talking about tonight that is not in the public domain.
The preference is always to include people rather than to find reasons for them to have to leave the meeting. So I'm quite content with that. Any other declarations of interest? Okay. I think our fingers too heavy sometimes on that button. We move on to review of the forward plan, which is a standard item on the agenda, and it's an opportunity if members wish to raise any issues listed in the forward plan. I'll take that as a no. So we move on to item 6, which is scrutiny work programme reflections. And it's an opportunity to, look at the work programme as set out in the agenda for what we've actually been undertaking this year. And just to point out that any feedback or reflections from committee members tonight can be fed into the scrutiny annual report, which will be produced for the annual meeting in May. So again, over to members, are there any issues you wish to raise in connection with the work programme? Councillor Thwaites.
Thanks. It was just really to say how important this part is, because when you look at the amount of papers, for instance, for this evening, there's a lot of papers that were needed to be read. So making sure we get the right ones at the right meetings rather than trying to clump too many things together, because there's always the ambition to do more or as many as we can. But it's maybe trying to find a way of actually cutting down, because I can't remember what the exact number was, but it was in the 400s, I think, total if you read every page. So it's just trying to take that into respect as well, and how important. So as a reflection on the whole process.
Very useful. Councillor Chubb.
Yeah, I would concur. It's just obviously if we're given more time, advance time to read the documents, it helps immensely, particularly with the existing commitments, work and everything else. Very good point raised, actually. Thank you.
I mean, I'm bound to reflect that's a challenge for members in respect of all the committees and council. They all work on the same sort of timeline in terms of the dispatch of papers. And it's not just this committee. I mean, I sit on the Audit and Standards Committee, and sometimes we're overwhelmed with the amount of data that's provided for that, quite rightly. But it is a challenge. And maybe we could take back the importance of executive summaries. This is one option that we could ask for as members. We get it with some items, not so much with others. I think it would help people in honing in on the key items in the paperwork in front of them. Yeah, Councillor Chubb, sorry.
May I just ask you whether AI is used? I mean, I know one has to treat it with a degree of caution, but we are increasingly using it now to consolidate documents to hit to the key points, and that it is very helpful. It has to be sense checked, always critical. You can never rely on it totally. That does help. I don't know in terms of reporting whether that system is employed, used. but certainly with K-Pilot and others, Claude, whatever, they are very useful.
So absolutely note the point about the amount of information, and one of the reflections that that I've had from that is that we try as officers to provide a lot of assurance, which is why there's a lot of appendices and they're things that have been seen elsewhere. That's definitely something we'll reflect on. In terms of AI, we do have an AI policy, so officers have some guidance around how to use AI, but what we must ensure is it is only ever a tool and it is not something that is relied upon. Certainly for summarising, consolidating documents, very helpful. So if you would like to take a point back about summarising, I'm sure we could take that on board to assist. And it may also be that rather than just listing appendices, we can help members to understand what is particularly relevant or pertinent to help them to sort of fit that to the particular points that have been raised. So we can help members to navigate that pack, recognising how much goes in.
Thank you, Ellen. They're useful points. Any other points people wish to raise about the work programme? Councillor Holmes?
Lost it now, and it's about bus shelters. Find it. It said something about county council. The county council were asked to contribute to bus shelters. I can't find it. Might sound, but what we did some time ago, various people, private people, actually paid money for bus shelters when they had advertising on them, and I thought that was a good thing. I can't find it. I just cannot find it now. It's disappeared. Ridiculous. It's here. That's not it. Oh yeah, here. This is it, page 9. Something about a grant for okay. Bus shelter renovation programme.
In the forward plan.
Yeah, I know it
Not,
is,
no,
but
no,
I
sorry.
before, and that's why. But I just thought it might be helpful that we did. There were various companies that asked if they could advertise. Only one advert on them, and they paid for various bus shelters. There was one at and there were two actually. I can't think where they were, but I thought it was helpful to us. That was all. There's one up where the old car park is, opposite Witherspoons. That was privately paid for.
I mean, I assume that there is advertising on some bus shelters, aren't they? I travel on the buses quite a lot. I did notice that, but I don't like the adverts very often because they're all for younger people.
No,
But
if we're not paying for them, it's helpful.
I think Lydia, the director, is able to offer some comments on this.
So working with Leicestershire County Council.
Sorry.
We have got a programme of bus shelter improvements in Melton. I don't have the list available in front of me, but I'm more than happy to provide that. They are supporting with the installation of new shelters as well as some repair and renewal of some others. And as part of that, if there are advertising opportunities, it will be led by the county council, but I can provide an update on that separately.
Although we've gone back to it's okay. I mean, as we've gone back to that, just a question, because I'm always confused about the ownership of bus shelters in Melton. Are any of them actually owned by us, or are they all owned by the county, or is it a mixture? It's a mixture, yeah. So can we have a Melton Borough flag on the ones that we own, maybe, or something to indicate it? So ours are kept in good condition, and we can direct the public complaints to the county council for the other ones. And Councillor Holmes. Back to the work programme reflections. So we had a couple. Are there any other comments people want to make about the work programme? All I would say, I mean, I hope committee members will agree, the briefings and workshops that we do, I certainly find, and it actually addresses some of the issues about absorbing information, have been really effective. I think they've enabled us to actually dig a bit deeper into issues and to understand them better, because we have more of a dialogue than we do in a formal committee setting. And in fact, I'm helped immensely tonight with the two reports on housing, by the fact I attended the quarterly review of housing that Chris Flannery provides for us, which is much more that sort of interactive exchange of information, and I certainly hope that the Scrutiny Committee will continue to see those as an important part of its annual programme, because I think we've got a lot out of it, and I think we've contributed in various areas of council policy and activities quite effectively as committee by using them. Any other reflections on the work programme? Sorry, yes, Councillor Holmes.
I couldn't go to that meeting. I don't know whether you're aware, but mostly parish council meetings are on a Monday night. And I really had to go to Nipton Parish Council that night, so I couldn't. I would have attended, but you can't be everywhere, can you? That's the, so I don't know whether it would be helpful not to have them on them. I mean, I don't know, but that's all. Thank you.
I'm sure that will be taken. I mean, I suppose the problem is that there are lots of things all through the week, and it's difficult to cut out a particular day or evening because of other commitments people have, because it would actually then squish all of our activities into 2 or 3 nights, which might not be practical. But I'm sure it can be taken away as a comment, and it would apply to other members as well who are involved in their parish councils, wouldn't it? Anything else on the work programme? Okay, thank you. We'll move on, and we'll move on to item 7, which is housing regulatory compliance annual update. And I think Michelle, you'll be introducing it, and obviously we've got other people here as well.
Thank you very much. So this is a routine update now. So we provide an annual update to the Scrutiny Committee to provide you with ongoing assurance around compliance in housing. Obviously, this features really heavily across the work programme for the council, given its regulatory significance and the programme of improvement over the last few years. The update that we had last year, we were not long since out of our inspections, so we were in the early days of our improvement plan, and what we've got this evening is a much fuller, I hope you'll agree, a much fuller report which shows the journey that we've been on and some of the difference that's now making, both in terms of performance, but most importantly in terms of the difference that's making for tenants. So you'll be pleased to know I'm not going to take you through the whole report, but I'll just point members to some of the key points. The other thing I just wanted to draw your attention to, and I'm sorry it's more paperwork for you, but when we drafted the report, we referred to the latest round of tenant satisfaction measures. So we're required to do a survey with tenants each year, and we had the provisional outcome of that survey when we drafted the report. But in that period between publishing and today, the results have been validated and there is no change to them. But we wanted to give you the first sight of the results, and they do show improved satisfaction across all of those measures. So I just think that's important context in terms of the time it has taken for us to really embed change and improvement, and the fact that that is leading to improved satisfaction and outcomes for the people that matter most when we talk about housing. So the report in front of us this evening, you'll see there is quite a lot of detail in the report. I draw your attention in particular to section 5.3, which shows the current position and progress against our regulatory improvement plan. So every landlord, when it has been inspected, has an improvement plan that it works to, and that's at any grading level. Just as a reminder, Melton Borough Council was one of the first councils to be inspected in the proactive inspection regime, and we expect to be inspected every 4 years, although we are seeing landlords are able to go through a process of regrading, which obviously we're very keen to take part in as well. C2 is a compliant grading, but it did show that there were some areas of weakness and areas that needed improvement. And as you have seen at the time, they were areas that we already knew about and were already working on. So the improvement plan has continued to progress those. If I can just draw your attention to 5.3.3, you'll see a table in the papers, and that refers to our self-assessment that we do regularly around our compliance with the standards, and particularly with the improvement strands. So we have 4 improvement areas, and we feel that we are now in a strong position with all of those, with a little bit more work to do on one in particular, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. What we've done within the report is we have gone back to our regulatory judgment, and we've lifted for each of those improvement areas what the finding was. So what were our strengths, but what were our improvement areas? And we've set out within the report what we've been doing since and what difference that has made, and some metrics around that. Very happy to take any questions on any of that at the end. The one in particular I would draw your attention to, because it's where we have most focus at the moment, is around tenant data. So we've always had a really good grip on our stock data. So we know our homes, we know them at a granular level, and that position has remained very consistent. We have always been weaker on the data we hold about our tenants. We did have a programme in place to allow us to build on that data, but we've taken the decision more recently to accelerate that. So you may, and I hope you've seen some of the recent communications around a tenant census, which is a more proactive approach to try and get information from our tenants if they are willing to provide it to us, including information about disabilities and any vulnerabilities that they might have, so that we can tailor our services, we can communicate in the right way, and that we are monitoring on a weekly basis, and we are seeing that is increasing. We are meeting with the regulator on a monthly basis, as all landlords have been inspected do, and we are giving them continued assurance of our progress, and they do check and challenge with us regularly. So a number of things that we do in between if there are areas they just want to sense check and test with us. What we've also done within the report is just to confirm that our stock condition surveys remain up to date, that our level of decency across our homes remains very strong. Then we also have set out some of the audit activity that happens across the service area, in addition to, as I say, our tenant satisfaction. The other piece of work that we've identified in here, because it has linked to some concerns and some challenges around accuracy of some of our service charging arrangements, is that we've had an independent review of all of our service charges undertaken, and that has come out very positively and has given us some areas that we need to focus on that will now form part of an action plan moving forward. So a number of things in there. We obviously have some key activities at the moment around mobilising new contracts. That's a huge undertaking, and we are mobilising 3 contracts over the next few months around repairs, voids and planned maintenance. Clearly that carries risk. We also need to maintain performance so that our tenants don't suffer through any drop in performance in that time. And so that's being managed actively. And we also have an eye on the inevitable changes ahead through local government reorganisation, because whatever configuration of councils across this area, our tenants still need to be treated in the way that they should, with respect. They should have access to all of the same information and services. And so we're starting to pay much greater attention to LGR and what it might mean as a landlord now and in the future. So I'll stop there. Happy to take any questions. And Chris, as you know, has much more knowledge than me to be able to help with any questions you've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, this is just a learning thing really that I've just seen on here. On page 68, and it's not Melton Borough Council, it's to do with Runnymede Borough Council. And it's got the rent, because it's the only bit that's different from the rest of them. It's got the rent and it's got a capital Y there, and it's got February 26th for the rent date, and then a new judgment. I just wondered, you know, I mean, obviously it's something to do with the rent and they probably need it to get assessed and whatnot. But the rent where it's got the capital letter Y, and I just thought it would be interesting to know, that's all.
I don't know if we can have an answer to that. I've dealt with Runnymede Borough Council. They are a bit weird. It might be as simple as that.
I think I can answer that one. So local authority landlords are inspected against the consumer standards in the way that we have been. There are a number of standards applicable to housing associations which are not applicable to local authorities. However, there's another standard called the rent standard, and we are required to be compliant with that. If the regulator finds that a landlord, including a local authority landlord, is in breach of or potentially in breach of the rent standard, which sets, how you can increase your rents and the safeguards you have to have in place, they would have a judgment in relation to that. So that indicates to me that Runnymede have had interaction with the regulator around the rent standard. I believe it's a yes to confirm.
If anyone from Runnymede Borough Council is listening, I don't really think you're weird. But I do notice they got a C4 assessment, which might link into where they are on a range of issues. We wish them well in improving it. Any other questions, Councillor Chubb?
Thank you very much, Michelle, for the update. Just reading through the report, I noticed on page 49 concerning the data and the evidence you can now secure under 5.313, references made under J. Tenant data has been used to identify ASB trends, analysis and hotspots. The ability to react. I noticed on the actual summary here, you very kindly provided that on the lower scoring TSMs, 55.8% is satisfaction with handling antisocial behaviour. Obviously, that will be a concern to many tenants, and particularly some of those issues. I'm sure it's been dealt with, particularly through the LAB. But can you just advise on that, how that all stands at the moment?
So I think the first thing I would say is in terms of tenant satisfaction measures, when you look across the whole housing sector, there are two that are lower across the sector. They are satisfaction with antisocial behaviour handling and satisfaction with complaints handling. It is fair to say that this has been an area of real challenge for this council in previous years, and that we have put an awful lot of effort into making changes. So you will see through our improvement plan that we have put a new case management system in place. We have improved training to staff, and we've placed a big emphasis on this. The thing that I hope will give you some assurance is that the satisfaction has increased by 13.5%, which is a huge jump. And that is reassuring to us, but also we're not complacent. What we've had alongside this is an internal audit of our ASB case handling, and that has shown that actually we've still got room for improvement around oversight and consistency of how we do that. We did have some particular issues in some particular areas, particularly in the town centre, and that has seen really proactive action, and we have seen some real challenges around county lines activity. So you'll have seen a number of closure orders that have taken place in response to those. So ASB has been a challenge. It's something that we continue to keep under review. Absolutely, it's of concern, but it's really in focus. But we feel that the satisfaction levels are showing us that things are improving. I wonder, Chris, if I can come to you, because I know you've done a lot of work with tenants and tenant groups around ASB and some of the letters and things that we've worked on with tenants.
Yeah, so one of the things that we have been doing is working with tenants to help them to understand the process that we follow. And with the perception survey, that's very much around tenants' overall perception of the way that we handle ASB. And quite often that's being answered by people who haven't had an antisocial behaviour problem, but they'll be looking at the way they think that we handle it. So a lot of our work has been about proactively working with tenants to help, so they can understand the process that we go through, the kind of results that we're having, and they can see the work that we're doing. And that then follows through into the things like our annual report that we share with tenants, where we share performance information, but also show them how their feedback has shaped and influenced the way we do things. And all of that's aimed at that kind of perception area, so that people who haven't necessarily had a particular antisocial behaviour problem understand the kind of the work that we're doing and how we deal with it.
I mean, it's interesting. I hadn't actually thought of that before. But it's a bit like, you'll encounter lots of people who tell you the problem. We have huge problems with crime in this town. And then if you ask the follow-on question, have you ever actually been a victim of crime? They'll say, oh, no, but you hear about it all the time, and that kind of worries me that the people we ought to be getting a clear view from are the people we actually interact with. And, obviously the perception survey, yes, that has to happen. I understand that. But it would be helpful to understand how the people who have real issues feel they're being served by the council. Do we have that as separate data?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. This is perception. So this is the questions we ask to everybody, and there's a similar pattern with things like formal complaints. That we ask a sample of 300 tenants how they think we deal with formal complaints, but we get about 90 complaints a year. So we're asking people who haven't actually made a complaint and been through that process. Alongside all of that, in a number of areas, including antisocial behaviour, we carry out individual satisfaction surveys with tenants once their case has closed. So we can collect the information direct from people who have been through that process. And we would always look at the two things side by side, and the story that they tell together can be quite useful for us. And I think there are other areas of the TSMs that if you look at things like the perception around how safe the home is at 73%, which is one of the higher figures. When you look at our compliance statistics for the areas that are important in terms of home safety, they're all at 100%. So the reality of the situation is we've got good confidence that homes are safe, but only 3/4 of our tenants feel safe, and that's the area then we need to help them understand the kind of work that we're doing and the standards that we need to keep the homes to and how we are keeping them safe.
I've one more quick question. Michelle, you mentioned on page 43 table, and you did say that it's self-assessment. How robust is that? It's not an external party. All due respect, having a third party outside is very helpful because they do challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason we do a self-assessment is a gauge for us around progress made against the specific elements of the action plan. So the action plan is one of the appendices to the report. It's really detailed, and we are held to account in relation to that by the regulator directly. So we are required to give them evidence and assurance, and they will check and challenge. We also align our internal audit programme to do some dip sampling and check-ins. So rather than us just saying, yeah, we know that all of our homes are safe, they will go in and they'll sample those and they'll check those. And ultimately, the regulator will not want to issue any regrading or anything like that unless they are satisfied that the outcomes for tenants are met, and that is the test that they apply. So the reason for including that table is to show that self-awareness from our perspective that we have made the progress in line with the action plan. We also report it on at each landlord assurance board, so we can have questions then that would come from members of that board, which is attended by officers, members and tenants, and also a critical friend from another council. And that brings different perspectives and allows us to sort of check and challenge into various areas. And when I come on to the next report, I'll show some of the areas that board has asked us to do some further due diligence and checking. So it's not perfect, we need to have that external validation and check and challenge, but we have a number of things. But our self-assessment is that sense check as to, are we making progress? Are we doing the things that we said that we would do? Because they are the things that the regulator is satisfied will move us to where we need to be in terms of that C1 grading. I hope that helps.
Councillor Thwaites.
Yeah, sorry, it's sort of a related question to Councillor Chug. I was just trying to think, how many tenants do we actually have? Just to put into respect the number of responses that we've got, and in taking into account the answer you gave earlier about the antisocial behaviour, how are those geographically spread around the different parts of the town and the rural sites? Shouldn't just talk about town, but and do we think that is actually giving us that widespread view and enough of a sample of the different areas?
So the antisocial behaviour bit first, I suppose what we've got is the ability to look at where we're receiving numbers of cases, and we can then see what we call hotspots, whether or not we have got a high number in any one place. That is all related to reports of antisocial behaviour that we have actually received. I don't have the statistics and the numbers, but what we do is use that information to then target things like our estate walks, where we'll go out and proactively be visible in locations and talk to residents about their experiences and things. So that data is relatively new. We've probably been collecting that for the last 6 months, and as we build that up, we'll build up a more accurate picture, if you like, of where we're seeing the problems. In terms of number of tenants, we have 1,800 homes, just under. I can't remember the exact figure off the top of my head, but it's something like 2,200 tenants, because we have some joint tenancies as well as single tenancies. The TSM survey is a set sample size that we have to achieve, and that's the amount that's set by government. This year, the figure that we've spoken to is in excess of the minimum sample size by quite some way, which is better because it gives us a more representative kind of view from tenants, rather than it being a smaller sample.
Councillor Cliff.
Yeah, this might just be the way my brain works. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it because I keep tripping up over it. So the table on page 45 with work stream 2, you've got under February 26th, you've written in that box about the recognition that volume of specific tenant data held represents a risk that needs to be addressed. Now, in any other context, you put the words volume of data and risk together, and another set of questions comes up. But is it, as expressed sort of in paragraph 5.3.10, the risk associated with meeting that workstream goals? Is that what you're talking about? Because obviously data and risk, other things come into my mind, and I just keep tripping over it.
So from a consumer standards perspective, being able to understand your tenants' needs and preferences sufficiently to tailor services and responses is considered a requirement, not a nice to have. And it's something that a lot of landlords struggle with in terms of the volume of data they hold. So this is about being able to really tailor your services, ensure that repairs are targeted to those most in need. It was not the case that the council did not have any data. And we'd always been really upfront about the amount of data held, and we always knew we needed to improve on that. You'll see in the table, we've gone from a green assessment to an amber one, and I think this links slightly back to your point as well, Councillor Chubb. We were satisfied with the progress we were making in terms of that plan, and we asked the regulator to review our progress, and their internal assessment was, you are making progress, but you still are going to struggle to fully meet the outcomes of the standards and outcomes for tenants unless that improves, which is why we've moved our approach to a full census. So we've had that external check and challenge from them. So nothing wrong with the plan other than we needed to speed it up. So the risk, nobody is at risk. But we are unable to provide the level of quality of response if we don't hold that data. What we've now got, and we're very happy to share with you on a more regular basis, the reports that come to us weekly. We're monitoring exactly how much data we hold across every single category, how representative that sample is of all of our tenants, how representative it is of our rural versus our town centre tenants. And we're very confident that the data, well, we're about 25% of that now, is representative of the tenant base that we know we have. So we know that we are making sound decisions based on the data we hold, and we're just continuing to improve on that. So I hope that helps. So the language is quite stark, but it's risk in that context.
So just to clarify, it's not that there's about to be a data breach or there's a problem with your computer systems and all that, because that's where my brain goes to when I hear data and risk put together. But it's about your work program. That's fine. That's fine. I thought it was, but I just kept tripping.
That's the job.
One final question. Obviously, the legislation is changing in favour of tenants. Changes to the short hold tenancies, and that obviously gives greater interests for tenants. What impact will that have, if any, at all, for Melton Borough Council as a landlord?
If I give you an update in relation to Melton Borough Council as a landlord, but then in terms of some wider context, Chris, can I come to you to maybe just give a brief summary of the wider private renters sector work, just as some assurance. So from a landlord perspective, the Renters Reform Act isn't going to make changes to the things that we're presenting to you this evening. That is predominantly for changing the way the private renters sector works. So the regulations and the legislation that we're working to was implemented a couple of years ago, and that is what is shaping our work now. There are always updates and various revisions, but the big fundamental changes for the private renters sector. Can I just come to you, Chris, to offer some reflections on that?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. There's obviously all of the reforms that relate to private rented properties. The work that we're doing as a team across the council, so we've got a cross-council team working together on getting ready for the new reforms. We have a focused group. We've done a self-assessment against the changes that are coming in, and we're working towards filling a couple of gaps around policies. But the work that we need to do on the private rented sector side of things is we're at a point where we understand the need and are prepared for it.
There's just a couple of things I want to raise. I suppose going back to the issue of ASB, I mean, when I thought about 50 years ago, I had a brief career in housing. It was kind of easy managing the estates because everyone who lived in Ayers Monsell lived in a council house, and everyone who lived on the Brunson estate lived in a council. You had whole areas. Whereas now, of course, with the right to buy and the sale of houses, we have more of a mix. So you can have a street that has a large number of council-owned properties, but there will also be privately owned and private landlord owned. Now, when it comes to ASB, I'm not entirely clear. I understand how we can act in respect of people who are committing ASB, if you want a better phrase, who are our tenants, and we have a range of measures that we can use. How does it work if one of our tenants comes to us complaining of ASB, but the actual perpetrators are not living in a council property? It's a different story there, isn't it? Or I presume it's a slightly different story. And I just like to understand how that operates, because it's increasingly a problem for us, I suspect.
I'm happy to come in on this one. So we have our Safe Communities team, and we have different roles, responsibilities in relation to antisocial behaviour more generally, irrespective of tenure. So they will follow their normal processes. Where that perpetrator or alleged perpetrator happens to be one of our tenants, we will use our housing roles and responsibilities to work alongside. And we have a protocol now for how the housing and the Safer Communities team work together. If it is another registered provider, so another housing association, we will work with them directly. I'm aware of some of the recent closure order activity have been with other housing associations, and our teams have worked alongside them. One of the things I look for when I consider the closure order applications is, are we satisfied that that particular landlord is ready to go with their tenancy action in the same way that I would expect us to be ready to go? And so we were working together and we were aligned. A little bit more difficult in terms of the landlord engagement if that's a homeowner, for example, or a private rented tenant. But the community safety powers and the process that we have of kind of moving through the stages remains, and that will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. And my second point, actually, it's not a question. I shall probably return to it when we get onto the annual report of the Landlord Assurance Board. But in section 5.34 and beyond, which is about turning up the volume of the tenant's voice, and I just want to reflect on the importance of the work that's been undertaken to bring tenants into our decision-making process. I mean, certainly I've encountered it through the Landlord Assurance Board, and I think it's a huge success in terms of the engagement with tenants. Of course, we had one of our scrutiny committees. We actually invited tenants to come along and had some engagement with them there. And I think it leads us to make better decisions. I think it leads us to understand the people who we provide housing services to better. And sometimes they just come up with straightforward answers to problems that maybe we don't even realise that exist, or don't see them in such a simple, well, simple, not in simple is the wrong word, but a direct way. So I think the work that's been undertaken by officers in building this has been, immense, and hopefully we'll continue and go from strength to strength. So that's just an observation. It's a plug for what I think is a huge success story for the council. Councillor Thwaites.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, well, it is related because it's in the paperwork that you gave us. So I'll say it's related. I mean, we covered it briefly when we did the quarterly housing review, but I think it's worth actually talking about it in the wider respect. And it's about Awaab's law and mould, etc. And in the appendices, in one, I think the February one showed that there was 36 reports of damp, 20 of which required some repairs. So I'm just saying, is there something we need to look at doing differently as far as our sort of regular repairs or review of the tenancies? Or because I know we've talked about sometimes it's a problem with the building, sometimes it's a problem with lifestyles or whatever the cause is, sort of thing. But is there something we maybe need to do so that we bring that down or keep a better eye on that?
So I think the thing that you're absolutely right. There is damp and mold related to the repair and the the state of the property itself. The asset management plan that we've got in place at the moment is focused on trying to do proactive work to address issues in tenants' homes that would potentially lead to mold. So an example might be insulation in the loft. If you've not got insulation in the loft, the ceiling is cold and that can lead to condensation forming and damp forming. We're also installing new windows with new doors, we're installing new heating systems. We're taking out expensive heating systems that we know tenants can't afford to run and putting in cheaper systems that are more controllable and give them the opportunity to switch them on and off. So there's a whole load of preventative work being done through the investment in homes. The other side of things is us keeping an eye on people's homes and not just relying on them necessarily reporting it to us, but using every opportunity we've got to address any issues. So we work with our housing team, so our housing officers have all had damp and mold training and will identify issues when they're out on site. We have both of our principal contractors, so Axis and SureServe, who do our heating for us, also flag and identify damp and mold to us when they're out and in tenants' homes, and they report it through the usual way. And we actually receive quite a good number of reports from them for properties that we wouldn't have known about if they hadn't told us. We also, through our stock condition surveys, which we do on a cyclical basis every 5 years, we look specifically for damp and mold as a category, as a hazard under the housing health and safety rating system. So we've got eyes and ears out there in terms of looking at it. The key bit for us is ensuring that we've done everything we can to make sure that home is up to the right standard, so all the repairs are done that are needed. It's got the ventilation that the tenant needs to help them manage the situation, and then the teams that we have can give them advice, guidance on how to manage it. And that's not just about giving them a leaflet that says here's how to generically manage mold or condensation in your home. It's about giving them specific advice related to their home and their circumstances that helps them to manage the situation better. So there's a whole load of work going on there. There is still work to do and there is still improvements that we can make, but there's a substantial amount of work underway at the moment.
Are there any other questions or comments members wish to raise? I'll just actually, it's reminded me, Councillor Thwaites raising that, because we discussed this at the housing quarterly review meeting Monday, seems longer ago. I just made the observation that I mean, we shouldn't blame tenants And I think it's important, and we were certainly satisfied the approach being taken was to support tenants. But sometimes tenants do need help and advice and guidance on how to maintain, a mold and damp free home once it's been addressed and dealt with. But within that, there could be encounters and repeat encounters. And I flagged up, and I'd like it to go back to what the feedback here that, as a public body, we do have a responsibility if we feel there is a risk. So if there are children in the home and the tenants aren't responding to the guidance being given, and then you end up with repeat visits, we might feel the need to actually involve other agencies. And I know Chris said that would be something that would be potentially done. But I think it's important we acknowledge that we are one of the many agencies that, if we identify potential risk to vulnerable people, need to take appropriate action. So this is a gateway to actually sometimes identifying those risks and doing the right thing around them. Okay, any other questions people want to raise on this report? Oh, Councillor Holmes.
Do we have a facility for getting tenants if they are in real problems? Can they actually be assured that they can come to somebody at the council to be to be taken seriously? Because I know it can happen, can't it? And that they can, because sometimes tenants, I know, feel very vulnerable if they have people coming into the area. And I mean, I know it's happened lots of times, and I just wondered if there is an officer now that actually takes that on board, and they have that sort of like a welfare platform for them to be able to come in. Is there anybody?
So we've continued to have our community support hub. So our mentors and our 56, nearly 60% of their caseload are our tenants. So they do provide a lot of support. That's not all requiring people to go to see them in Phoenix House. Sometimes they will go into people's homes as required. The team also administer the household support fund, so giving people access to utility vouchers if needed to help them in a particular hardship situation, but also assessing their wider needs. So why is it they're experiencing hardship? What else is happening for them they might need help and support with? Last year there was a review of housing officer patches to try and make those more manageable between the housing officers, because we found that some had caseloads with a lot more work and requirement because the volume of tenants and some of the challenges in particular areas, some less so. So that rebalancing was undertaken. We have put new arrangements in place in the last 12 months to put our independent living officers into our sheltered housing schemes, and we have our independent living service at Gretton Court as well. And we're finding that those officers are identifying and able to provide support to people as needed. So there are a number of different ways. People can also come into reception, and we monitor how many people come in, what were their needs. Do they need a private meeting with somebody from our customer services team? Do they need an appointment with the team? So it's on a case by case basis, but I don't know any other council that has the community support hub model that we have. And it's something that we know does make a difference. The other thing I would say, and it's really important, is some people won't want to come to the council at all for help when they're experiencing hardship. So we also try to make sure, and Chris and I have used the phrase around making every contact count, or using any opportunity that we have to engage with tenants to understand what any needs might be. As something that was really reassuring to me this week was when we were briefed on this tenant satisfaction survey, the people that carried out the survey said that if they identified any repairs issues or any safeguarding concerns, that they were flagging them. About 5% of the people they've spoken to, they have escalated concerns to us, whether it's around welfare, safeguarding, or urgent repairs needed. So there are a number of ways there. That doesn't mean that we will get it right all of the time, or that we hear from everybody. And so I'd just say the other really, really crucial role in this is all of you as ward members, because you will have contact from people, you'll hear from people, you'll know of people, and we always take the concerns that you raise with us seriously as well.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments, questions on this report? Okay, I'd like to, oh, Tim, sorry.
Something just come to me. You know, the people, the contracts that go out to the council properties and who sense this. Do you get a survey back from them from the state of the houses? And sometimes, because I've had people who've done some electric work and the state of the building inside is very poor, and I think council employees won't let them in the house, sort of thing. I don't know how you can get entrance to the properties, but whether the contractors can give you some sort of comeback because they've gone into the house and looked at the property and more feedback that way afterwards. That's all.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that the Aaron, SureServe and Axis report back on damp and mould. They do report back on other property conditions as well, and we make sure that all of our contractors have safeguarding training. So if they go into a property and they see anything from a safeguarding perspective, they know the correct route to report that back to us as well. So we have regular reports both on property conditions and also on any safeguarding concerns that they have, because you're absolutely right, they are sometimes the people that do get behind the door when our officers don't. So it's important that we get that feedback from them as well.
Thank you. Last bid. No? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is the Landlord Assurance Board annual report. Now, actually, I'm going to vacate the chair for this item, and Alan Thwaites will chair this bit because I sit on the Landlord Assurance Board, and I just felt it was appropriate that I didn't actually chair a report on something I actually am part of. Do we need to switch seats? Yeah. Yep. Or can we do without switching seats? Because then our names will come up correctly, won't they? Does that make it easier?
Yeah, I mean, Alice's name will.
Yeah, let's do it that way. Yeah.
It cuts down on the exercise I have to do, so that's fine. But I'll add to the special days that you mentioned earlier at the beginning of the meeting. Well, this will be my first and probably last time to chair a scrutiny meeting. So, as I said, the Landlord Assurance Board annual report, and I think Michelle, you are going to give the report.
Thank you. So I'll just give a summary, and then again, I think Chris and I are both happy to take any questions. And Mike, as you say, you're obviously part of the board as well. So we have made a commitment, or you have made a commitment, that you would have an annual update from the Landlord Assurance Board, and that is a position that was supported by the Cabinet, because recognising that it's a really important part of making sure that tenant voices are heard and that there is genuine oversight with a focus on housing rather than housing forming part of our wider suite of performance or risk reviews, etc. So this is a partnership which we describe as a partnership of equals, and I think that's really important. And one of my main reflections, which I hope you'll hear through the summary today, is that our tenants have continued to play an incredibly important part of that, in that exactly in line with what we expected them to be able to do and feel part of. So the last time we provided the annual report to you was last May. The Landlord Assurance Board at that time had just concluded its first year, and I remember one of the main pieces of feedback from you, Mike, was that next time we hope we'll be able to talk about the impact, because rather than just implementing a board, and that's what we've tried to really do in this particular report. So since the last time you had a review at this meeting, the board has met 4 times as scheduled. The board continues to have good representation from members that have been identified to be part of the board, including Councillor Brown on behalf of this committee. We also have tenant representatives on the board, and we've been through a process of recruiting those tenants. It is tenants that have endorsed their tenant representatives be on the board, and we've also had a critical friend who's joined us from Lincolnshire Council, and that's been really helpful as a reciprocal relationship. So we also sit on their equivalent board over in Lincolnshire. What we've done within the report is you'll see at 5.5, we've just set out the things that we've covered in each of the meetings. And the reason we've done that is just to give assurance that the board genuinely does see performance information, financial information, risk information, things that link directly to governance and oversight of our housing service. But then we've also had those specific areas of focus relevant to regulatory compliance and improvement. The other thing that the Cabinet had agreed was that it was the Landlord Assurance Board that would take ownership of just having that continued oversight and assurance of our regulatory action plan. So the board is presented with that each time and has the opportunity to hold us to account, to check and challenge, or to ask us to place particular focus on areas. What we've done at 5.7 onwards in the report is we've just outlined 4 key strands, 4 key areas where we think there's been real impact this year. One is around the role of the board in oversight and assurance. The second is around their role in monitoring performance, complaints and tenant satisfaction. The third is around service development and improvement. And then the fourth has been around organisational learning. And I'll just draw your attention to a couple of those things in particular where we think there has been the most impact or has helped us to give confidence to the regulator that the board is doing what it should. One of those is at 5.9.1. So as part of one of our routine updates to the Landlord Assurance Board around our complaints performance, the board identified that we had a quarter where we had not submitted responses on time at the level of performance that we should, and certainly not the level of performance that we're normally used to. And they asked us to go away and do some further analysis to check that that wasn't a trend, to check that that was a one-off and it was a blip. So that assurance was provided. So Chris and the team were able to give that and circulate that to the board. And interestingly, a few weeks later, the regulator picked up the same thing and said, can you give us some assurance? And it was helpful for us to be able to show that this had already been checked and challenged, and here was our evidence and assurance. Another thing to draw your attention to is around a code of conduct. And I think this is probably one of my board highlights of the year. So we're sitting with our tenants talking about, our perception of contractor behaviour or how it feels to have contractors in tenants' homes. And tenants spoke up and said, actually, here are some of our experiences. And it was quite a tricky moment for us, if I'm honest, around some of the things that we didn't know about and that we don't want to be the case for any tenants at any point, whether they were historic or not. That's not okay. And that resulted in a period of co-design, so tenants and officers working together to design a code of conduct, which we have used when procuring recent contracts to say to our contractors, this is what our tenants expect of you if you're working in their homes and their communities. So that's been a really important programme of work. Another really key part has been that our Landlord Assurance Board, and really informed by our tenant groups as well, have been saying you need to do something different around repairs and your repairs contract. We saw it as an area of lower satisfaction historically. We didn't feel that our repair service was able to meet the modern requirements around customer engagement, customer journey, nor had it been designed to meet the requirements of AWAB's law, which has come in more recently. And so we set about a process of accelerating a re-procurement of that contract, but it was our tenants and our Landlord Assurance Board that helped design the specification for that. So we had a workshop in June that was designed together. They also supported them with developing the evaluation questions, and one of our tenants took part in the evaluation. So that was a really big change for this council. And I'll say at this point, I think we're eternally grateful to our tenants who are involved, because they put an enormous amount of time and effort into being part of it. And I'll come on in a moment to why they're not here this evening, because I don't want you to think that we don't continue to value their input. Another thing that they have done is we have now got, through our tenant engagement group, which is known as Your Voice, Your Choice, rather than an officer leading that, a tenant leads and chairs that meeting. That tenant is also part of our Landlord Assurance Board and now provides his update in tenants' words around what's working and not working and the areas that they wish to have a focus. And that's been invaluable to us. Another really key thing has been around involving our tenants and the wider board in sector learning. So there's been particular work around learning from Grenfell. So although we don't have high-rise accommodation in our area, there are learnings relevant to all landlords. So that has featured as part of it. And we were able to take some of our tenants with us last year to the housing conference in Manchester, which we've put in the report, the feedback from one of the tenants that attended. And it was brilliant to see their enthusiasm and what they got from that and their involvement and engagement in that. And I believe, Chris, you've got a tenant joining you again this year, haven't you, at that? So yeah, overall, I think the board is progressing really well. It feels like it started to really get some focus and some real purpose. Our tenants have made a big difference. We've just recruited a new tenant to the board who's attended his first meeting, and we've also had the regulator come back and observe a meeting recently. So they actually observed our very first meeting, which was just about our inspection time. So we were very new, and they reflected on the change and how much more embedded that is, and the fact that it is making a real difference. The reason that we've not got tenants here tonight, other than our agenda being heavy, is because at our next meeting of the Landlord Assurance Board, we are going to be working collectively on a review of effectiveness of the board from an outcome for tenants perspective. So we previously had a review from Tenant Participation Advisory Service, and it's one of their recommendations. So we will do a structured review there that will allow us to really assess that from everybody's different perspectives on the board. And my hope is that we can take the feedback from this evening into that. So do it the other way around, rather than being here this evening. So that absolutely will still feature, and they'll have a really key role in shaping that. So that's all from me at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And then, well, Councillor Chubb is the first one I could see. So, Councillor Chubb.
In your way as well. Again, thank you, Michelle. And I have to say I commend the work that is being done by the LTA, and it's great to hear that the tenants have got a voice and it is in collaboration. So thank you for that. Helpfully, you set out the main considerations on 5.5 page 147, which is helpful for all of the key points. And you also set out in 5.7, as you said, the key areas of focus for the report, 4 distinct headings there. Bearing in mind, we are going through changes, and I know you make reference to the unitary authority later on in the thing, but what is the focus going forward for the following year? And my other question is, again, great to have tenants representation on the board and being proactive. But again, how are they recruited? And are they true representatives of the tenants? Because we all know that you can have a very strong individual and they're representing their own views and community views. So it's important that all tenants are bought into that. And there's been an appointment process. So those are the 2 key areas.
Okay, so if I just take the first point around future changes, and then Chris, can I talk hand to you around tenant recruitment and our representatives? So one thing that I forgot to make reference to, so thank you for reminding me, is recommendation 2.3, which is a different recommendation to normal, and that is to seek your suggestions around the role that the Landlord Assurance Board can have in maintaining oversight of regulatory compliance and stability during a period of change and transition. So I'm really mindful, and I'm sure we all are, that we can't afford to let things drop just because we're going through a period of change. We are still a landlord and we have responsibilities, not just up until vesting day, but beyond, because a new council will have exactly those same responsibilities. It is a period of risk, having a big change, and irrespective of the configuration of councils in Leicestershire that's agreed, we would go from being a landlord of around 2,000 homes to 15, 16,000. That's a huge change, and it's really important that we go into that process strong and maintaining really good practice as we go through that. So there are a number of things that we're seeking to do to make sure there is stability and certainty, but it is important that there is somewhere that's got their eye on, is this we're still working and are we still doing the right things, which is why we've made the recommendation around the Landlord Assurance Board fulfilling that role and then working with you as a committee to report back. So I hope that helps. It is a challenging period, but we think that's probably the best place to give a focus on housing stability. Chris, could I hand to you on the tenant recruitment?
Yeah, so we treat it as the Landlord Assurance Board members who are tenants as a role. We advertise it as we would any other job at the council. So it has its own profile, its own job description, if you like. It's advertised. We obviously promote that through all of the different channels that we have available to us to reach out to our tenants and try and really attract as many people as we possibly can to it. As Michelle mentioned earlier, that when we've had the applications, it's the tenants who sit on the Your Voice, Your Choice panel who make the ultimate decision on whether we appoint those people or not. We don't tend to have a selection process because there's not many people who come forward, but it's more a case of our most recent recruitment resulted in one person expressing an interest, but the tenants still decide whether or not they want to put that person forward to represent them or not. Our tenant engagement lead works really closely with those people when they first come into post. We have development conversations with them because we recognise that the role that they're going to be coming into is very different to perhaps what they're used to as maybe an engaged tenant because of needing to represent wider tenants. So we'll put them onto things like training courses that Michelle mentioned TPAS, the Tenant Participation Advisory Service, who are a national body. They offer training for tenants to help them into roles like this. So we'll have a bespoke development plan for each individual. In terms of how representative they are as a group, we have originally had 4. And when we look at things like what we now know from our tenant data, which is the split that we mentioned earlier around our villages and town, we have around 2/3 of our stock are in the town and 1/3 is in the villages. And out of those 4 people, 1 of them was from the villages and 3 of them were from the town. So you could argue it would be nice to have more people from villages, but it is actually representative of the kind of tenants that we have. It's always a challenge to attract people, and I think that's the difficult thing. And what our focus is as we recruit more people is targeting our recruitment efforts, if you like, in the right places. If we're underrepresented in an area, we would always try our best to attract people from another area into the role.
Councillor Holmes, I think, was first, and then Councillor Gordon. Councillor, yeah.
When did this stop? I mean, I started this 25 years ago, and we had somebody from Somerby. We had this actual started 25 years ago when I was chairman of housing. It was called housing then, and I thought it was quite the best thing for tenants. Did go to courses, they did go to conferences, and we couldn't accommodate all the tenants that wanted to be there. I just think at that time it was something that was so important. I know it was a lot smaller area, I suppose, but it was so important to hear the voice of the tenants. And so, when did it stop then? Because I thought it was still going on. It had carried on. Perhaps, I'm amazed, really, that.
So I think some reassurance, Elaine, tenant engagement didn't stop. Tenant engagement has never stopped being important or being a focus, but it's taken different shapes over the years. When I joined Melton Borough Council in 2021, there was a group known as TFEC, which I'm sure you will have had involvement with previously, and they've done some incredible work, really, really impactful work over the years. But they were struggling with membership. They were struggling to be able to attract people to that, and it's a big responsibility as well, leading and coordinating that. And the legislation was changing. So we agreed that we would move to a different arrangement. So since then, we've had what's known as we call it the Your Voice, Your Choice group. So that's our wider group of engaged tenants. And that is really successful. We get a good representation there and a number of things that come from that, road shows, gardening competitions and various things. So that's not stopped. What we'd recognised 2 years ago is that we didn't have anywhere in the council where there was we didn't have a housing committee, with tenants and members, etc. We didn't have somewhere where there was just a focus on housing and oversight in response to the legislation as it is now. So this is about forming part of informing our governance arrangements and giving us that confidence as a landlord. So, but yeah, please be assured that wider engagement hasn't stopped. I think it will have varied over the years, but this was something slightly different, and there are different ways that tenants can be involved, and this is one of them.
Thank you. I agree. Councillor Gordon.
Yes, some years ago, and it is some years ago, there was a man come to put a radiator in a council flat, and he did a really good job. But then because he wanted to take a photo of what the work he'd done, because he wanted to go into his business of his own eventually, and he started to clean the pipes, which was brilliant, you know, the pipes that he put in. And he said he doesn't usually do this. He said because it's only a council house. He just wanted to get it cleaned up so to take a really good photo for his portfolio, if you like. And I just want to ensure that that is instilled in the the repair people's minds, that it's not just a council house. People have got to live there, and they shouldn't downgrade it in their minds. So if you can instill that, that would be brilliant. Thank you. But other than that, I think what you're doing now is fantastic. Yeah.
Brilliant.
And I assume some of that is within the code of conduct that you were talking about. But do you want to, Chris? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll elaborate on that. And you're right, it is linked to the code of conduct, because Michelle mentioned in her introduction that was specific feedback we'd had from tenants, and we sat with them in the Landlord Assurance Board and listened to some, as Michelle said, some of the uncomfortable stories that they were telling us around the way that things had happened in their homes and the way that some of our contractors might have behaved in the past. And those had all been addressed through complaints and things, but there was a bit of a pattern that we wanted to look at, and that's where the code of conduct came in. And the important thing for us is that we develop that with tenants. So we asked them what was important to them to include in the code of conduct, and everything that's included in there has come from feedback from them. That's not just something that's been written and we then publish and put on a shelf. The whole purpose of that now is that is a code of conduct that our own staff follow. So they've all been trained. They all have effectively signed up to it and committed to that as a standard. But the same applies to our contractors. So the recent procurement that we've been through for the repairs service and the void service and the plan maintenance service, when we send out all of our documents, which includes our specification to tell them how to do the work, a key document that went into that was the code of conduct, and that will form part of our contract with them. And we will seek assurance from the contractors that all of their operatives have been inducted and understand and have signed up to that code of conduct. So we've made a real commitment to it. It's our job now to hold those contractors to account, and we need feedback from tenants if if they're finding that isn't being followed. But we have something to refer back to now, and it is all about reducing or removing that social housing stigma that we all see, and I think this is a really important step in doing that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you.
And so, Cliff.
Yeah, a couple of things. I suppose I want to start by paying tribute to the work that you guys have done over the last few years. I think it's been absolutely fantastic, and at a time when confidence in councils of all stripes and types is at an all-time low. Reading those quotations from Brian and Carol on page 152, I just think sums it up for me and symbolises the progress that has been made over the last couple of years with this. You know, it seems to have sort of been turbocharged. I think it's sort of just hit a point in all the work you've been doing for a long time. It suddenly kind of has sort of gone whoosh, and I think that's great. And I feel really proud, and I've not done any of the work, but I feel really proud that MBC has got to this point. And I know that the seeds have been sown for a number of years. I'm not making a particular point other than that, really. But I suppose you've already referenced the changes, LGR and periods of transition. I guess it's something you're going to come to, but I just wondered, have you considered labs in other councils, you know, the borough councils that will be coming together, whether, you know, whatever the number is of borough councils that will be coming together in the new unitary, you'll all have the ones with housing stock will have labs that will have their own shape. And obviously we've developed ours here dynamically in response to needs that as they've arisen. We don't know how they've evolved in other places, and so just wondered has any work started on that yet, or are there plans to consider how they will come together? Because I don't want to lose the Brians and the Carols and their enthusiasm and sort of feeding them into whatever the new structures are. Be really important.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and there's almost a bit of a grieving process as we go through that LGR process as to the things that we've built and created and that relationship that's been formed. And I think one of the things that makes the relationship with tenants so powerful is that they are, and we are, immersed in our communities. We're not remote from our communities. So that's something that we need to really harness. I think just to take a step back, when we were developing the North City South proposal for LGR, we regarded tenants, not just in Melton, but across all of these stockholding councils, as a really valuable stakeholder in that process, because they, you know, whatever the change and shape of councils, for them, their landlord is going to change. And it's really important that that's valued and recognised in that process. What was really heartening in that feedback that came through is actually Melton Borough Council tenants spoke really passionately about what we've built here and the role and the impact that they feel that they're having. What's really positive about that is we start in a really strong position in terms of being able to inform and influence as we go through the process, whatever the outcome. It's not about the outcome at this stage. It's about, you know, getting this right for our tenants. There aren't labs everywhere. There are various different things. So some councils have what they will call improvement boards, some will have tenants, some won't. Some councils have been through inspection, some haven't. We regard ourselves to be in a really privileged position because we were first in that process. So we've learned so much. We're so much further forward because of that. And we've made some of the mistakes on the way as well. So one of the challenges for us and opportunities will be how we shape and influence transition and what that looks like. And we've always come at that from a point of being as match fit as we possibly can. So I don't know what the final shape and structure will be. The other reflection I'd give is that in other areas that have gone through LGR or amalgamation of councils, housing accounts, so what you'd know as the HRA here, have remained separate for a number of years. So we're not going to suddenly have everything all mixed up. So you may well still see you know, specific areas of area focus. And that's something that we know really matters to our tenants. And when they fed back around their concerns about LGR, it was losing that ability to connect and influence locally. So tenant voice is valuable. So we don't have the answers yet, but I think we're trying to do the right things in being ready for that and being ready to shape that as we go through.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, right. A couple of things I wanted to say, and I'd made a note, and you more or less said what I wanted to say, Michelle, on that last bit. But firstly, I mean, I just want to actually say, I mean, I've sat on the lab since its formation as a representative of this as chair of scrutiny, and I'm sorry, everybody, it's the one meeting I really enjoy going to on this council. And I think there's one of the reasons for that is the actual engagement from our tenants. It feels much more real. You know, working with people are at the heart of the service we're providing, and their contribution has been huge. So, you know, it'd be interesting in a number of ways. I won't elaborate. But one of the things I do think they bring to the organisation is that they, by bringing them in and being part of our formulation of that's like the code of conduct and policies and regularly being treated as being part of the team, they actually become trusted advocates amongst the wider tenant body in a way that, dare I say, us politicians can't be, and even officers can't be. And I think that's an asset as well, that it links us into that wider tenant community in a way. And we've got some fantastic officers, and you mentioned Kerry as the tenant engagement officer, who really work hard, but they're still council officials, you know, and there's that little barrier there. And I think bringing the tenants in has helped us break that barrier down, and that's really valuable. And for one, I hope going into LGR that remains part of the approach to the new authority. And I was going to say, because I'm aware of what's happened elsewhere, that housing often is one of the last places to be, disaggregated, or aggregated, or whichever way around it is. It's likely that it will, each of the different existing borough or district areas with housing stock will continue to operate as entities for some time into the future. It won't be sudden change on 1st of April 2028, which I think is right. But it will present challenges because eventually it will become one organisation, and keeping tenants on board in an organisation isn't just walking down the road to the council office for a meeting, but might be in Loughborough or Colville or whatever. I think is going to be quite challenging because officers can, councillors certainly can travel around, but tenants perhaps would find it more difficult. So that's something that's going to have to give them some thought. And then the last point I just wanted to make is having lauded the success of this, it does make me wonder. We're not just a housing authority, we provide a range of services. And wouldn't it be beneficial if we use this model to see where it could apply in other parts of our operation, bringing users of our services in to be part of the process? Because I think it actually makes us more credible, but it also gives us insights into, you know, how well we're delivering to have ordinary members of the public actually as part of that. That's just a thought. That's an aspiration and dream for the future. It's probably not going to happen here in the next 12 months because I'd rather suspect we've got a lot of work to undertake that we're resources for that limited. So yeah, I just wanted to sing the praises to some extent. That's why I didn't want to be in the chair doing this. As a participant, I think it's been a great success, and I hope it can be a model for going forward in the new authority.
Well, thank you for stealing all of my last questions because well, I was going to ask you because you've got the experience of actually being on the lab and sort of working towards it. And Michelle talked about some of the things that where it's influenced the decisions. And it's a question to go back again to both of you, both the officers and yourself as a councillor. What has the lab actually done that you didn't expect? I mean, and where have they've had a big effect on the direction that's gone, that's taken, and you know, that you didn't expect? And a follow-up question would be, is it something that other councillors would be good to observe so that they could actually see the success of that process? Because we've all got housing within our wards, so I think everybody's got housing within their wards, and so it'd be something to actually see I'm better engaging the tenants as well. But what have been the things that have actually surprised you the most with the decisions or the direction that they've taken in the meetings?
I don't think it's so much surprised. It's more feeling confidence on those decisions, that by having that input and the way the lab's structured and the partnership between officers and elected members and tenants, and it's not that we don't take good decisions generally. I don't want to be, but I think it strengthens my confidence in those decisions and confidence that we're doing the right thing for our tenants. And there's certainly examples of where their input has significantly influenced outcomes. By simply giving insights that perhaps everyone's got the best intentions, but sometimes the lived experience just brings something extra to the table. And that's what I think is the real value of it. And as further, I don't know how many observers we'd want at a lab meeting, but I think it would be good for other members to see this model in operation. The one thing actually, I'm going to say it because it always amuses me. One of the things that was done right at the start is the tenant reps were each given a little bell, one of those ding ding bells, and the point of the bell was anytime someone used jargon, they rang the bell. And I think I have said, could I have one for council meetings? But it injects some reality into it, because we were talking, Councillor Chubb was saying earlier, and Councillor Thwaites, about all the paperwork we get and how overwhelming it is at times, and don't you just feel sometimes you just like to press a bell and say, can you explain it in simpler terms? So yeah, I think it's been a great experience and a good model for how we can be more effective in including people and making decisions with confidence.
I don't know if Chris or Michelle want to add anything to that.
I'll go first because Michelle might steal some of the things I want to say, and then I'm going to say, I think there's been some. I think the thing that probably has surprised me the most in some ways is whether it surprised me, but it's the I think it's the way that tenants are happy to call us out. Coming into a meeting like this, which we sit around like this, and there are a number of people in the room, and it's quite, I guess, daunting for somebody to come into that situation. But we sit in those meetings and we engage and we discuss and we present things to them, and they do challenge. They come back and challenge us, and through that challenge, that's where some of the stuff that we've listed in the report, like the code of conduct, has come about, by them coming back to us and saying, sometimes it's where we perhaps present our perception of the reality, and then they'll say, yeah, well, you kind of see that, however our reality is this, and then that's where some of the good works come from. So I think that, and the development of the board, where it started from, particularly 2 years ago, to where it is now, in terms of the way the agenda's structured, in terms of the way we do the meetings, that has been changed and updated because of things that tenants have told us. A really daft example is the way the agenda pack is put together. It's a bit like this. It's hundreds of pages long by the time we finished it, and we were finding we were sitting in meetings and people just couldn't find things. They just couldn't locate things. And as a result of that, we went away and really honed it down and got it into a much better position and made it a lot clearer for them. So yeah, it's been a good experience.
So I think it's on that same theme. It's not a surprise, I guess, but I was surprised at the level of comfort with this, is that they are not afraid to be our reality check. And that leads to some uncomfortable truths sometimes. And actually, it's really nice to hear those things in those meetings and them to feel safe to say those things to us. And I reflect on when we very first set up the Landlord Assurance Board, we had a meet and greet session with the tenants here, just so that they didn't come into a formal meeting first off and feel uncomfortable in any way. And I prepped a presentation that we were going to sort of take them through the structure of the board, but we just started it with, let's introduce ourselves. And in the end, we didn't need the presentation because they just said, this is my name and this is what it feels like to live in one of your homes. And it just broke down those barriers, and it really built a connection that I've really valued all the way through. But they are our reality check. We don't get everything right. We don't even get everything right for our tenants that are really actively involved, and we have to own that sometimes. But I think that's part of being real and part of having that relationship, and it really, really matters to us. And I will just reflect on the bell, because those bells have really made us laugh in those meetings, and we do watch each other really worried because we know we've said something, we don't know how to explain it, and they've got their finger hovering. So yeah, and they've been brilliant, and they take part in so many things, and we now have other councils that are coming to observe what we're doing and things. So yeah, we're very proud, but it's transformed because of those tenants.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I concur with everything that's been said, and think it's a fantastic achievement to take it forward. But I think one of the biggest measures is the fact that people are still willing to participate, to come back, because they will only come back if they actually feel they're getting something back from it, and it's actually they're actually doing something valuable. So otherwise they just won't come back. So I think that's one of your biggest success measures, Councillor Gordon.
Got it. Yeah, right, because I think what's happening with the lab is brilliant. And I just want off. Yeah, oh, sorry, thanks. Yeah, to do with the lab. And I was just wondering if other councils are willing to take this up. Are they looking to see what happens with our model? I think I remember something in the report about somebody was sort of come to view it, if you like, or to scrutinize it. And I just wondered how many councils have really been interested.
So we've had at least 2 councils that have come to observe what we've done through the Landlord Assurance Board. What works for us might not necessarily work for others. So we've always said whatever you design needs to be right for your context, your council, the way you work, the way that you engage, and and your level of I guess where you are on your own improvement journey. The one referred to in the paper was a Sussex-based council, and that was actually born out of just a connection within the sector. But I think what's also really important is the ongoing relationship. So Chris, I know you have some ongoing relationships with numerous councils now, and lab features in some of those conversations, but we're learning so much from other councils as well. And I don't know if there's anything you want to say on that, because I think that's been really powerful, hasn't it, for our work?
It has, and I think being one of the first councils to be inspected, we found ourselves with a lot of councils reaching out to us and asking for our experiences. And as Michelle said, I think it's broader than just landlord assurance boards. It's across the board that we've been giving them the benefit of our understanding and our position and knowledge, and we've been listening to their views. It's surprising. The thing is that it is about making it fit your context, fit your demographic, fit your tenants and your location. So it's really important to bear that in mind. The bit that Michelle said about what works for one won't necessarily work for us. Our arrangements would be very different, for example, to a London Borough Council. You know, we're just different. So it's important. There's a bit of a risk of saying we'll just replicate exactly what somebody else is doing, but it might not work. But the sector learning and the relationships we've built with other councils have proven to be really, really useful, reciprocal relationships.
Thank you. And there's any other comments? I think that's good. And again, just commendation for all the work that's been done on it, and may it continue. Thank you. And I'll pass the chair back to Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Councillor Thwaites. Just a final comment, general comment. And I think it's worthy of note, and it covers both these gender items we've just dealt with. It's hard to recall that in 2019, this council referred itself to the housing regulator in recognition of the fact that it was failing in many areas in its delivery of its housing services. I think to be able to sit here tonight and on both of these reports is a testament to what the council has striven to do, but also the incredibly hard work of the officers. And I think we should note and record and express our thanks for that, because this is about people's lives, about the homes they live in and the quality of their lives as a result of that. And for us to have in the past been, not put it bluntly, failing, and now to be able to point to all the successes we're having and continue to have, and it will get better, I think is something worthy of note and commendation. Okay, I'm going to finish there. Next item on the agenda, and one reflection I've had is, and I thank Lydia and Lee for sitting through the riveting housing items, but maybe we should have put the items the other way around. But we come now to the Stockyard project update, which is the final item on tonight's agenda. And are you going to lead off on this, Lydia? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, and what a tough act to follow. And I will endeavour to avoid any jargon for not wanting to be interrupted by a bell. So the Stockyard is based in Melton Mowbray, for those of you that didn't know. I want to start by saying it's a project that is very much rooted in place. This is not a brand new building. It is one that is on the site of a historic livestock market that already attracts several thousand farmers annually. It is part of our town centre. It is a well-connected project, and I would really appreciate members to consider that when I'm going through this report this evening. It's well connected in terms of internally, the people that are involved in it. It sits within my directorate as place and within the regeneration team, but it's been very much a collective effort. We've had support from procurement, from finance, from legal colleagues, and from the team as a whole across every single directorate. It's a partnership project in terms of its position within the town. We meet regularly with Melton Mowbray Town Estate, the Business Improvement District, Gilstream, the current operators of the site, and wherever possible, try to engage with a range of businesses for its future success. And it is also one project out of 4 projects that was awarded significant funding from government. So in 2023, Melton Borough Council was awarded what was called levelling up funding. That's the first and last time I will refer to that funding, because we have been advised that we just refer to it as government funding now. We are in partnership with Rutland County Council. They are the accountable body for the funding, and the stockyard is one of 4 projects which I've highlighted in the report. The purpose of that is that we meet regularly with Rutland. We share good practice across those different projects. They're not just the accountable body. They don't just check up on us in terms of risk and finance. We work collaboratively on those projects. We jointly promote them. They are known collectively as Rural Innovation in Action, and we have most recently, as you'll continue to hear this evening, taken on responsibility of continuing to support and promote those projects collectively across the region. This evening, I'm going to provide an update on where we're at with the Stockyard project, and I will focus on the development of the project through the RIBA, and RIBA stands for the Royal British Institute of Architecture, and they are recognised stages in the development of any construction project. And I will also touch on the procurement of the construction, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Lee, who's going to talk about the operation of the project and how we really bring it to life for its success. So following the award of the funding, at various points along the way, you've had members have had regular updates through Cabinet and Council. The budget is 12.1 funding from government, but with £1.5 million match funding from Melton Borough Council. So it makes it a very significant project for the council. Alongside the oversight from Rutland County Council, we obviously report through them regularly directly to government. And we also have our own internal structures in the council in terms of how we manage that project. So we have a programme board, we have regular team meetings, and we also report regularly to our senior leadership team as well. In December 2025, Cabinet received a report with an update. That update included a review at RIBA Stage 4. So RIBA Stage 4 is the conclusion of the design stages of the project. That is a good point for a review and a sense check of where we are in the project. But it also aligned with an update from government that we were allowed a little bit more time to complete the project up until March 2028. That also enabled us not only to do a review, but it also enabled us to recommend that we went out to tender for the main construction contract. So we were able to use that time effectively. The reason why we recommended that and Cabinet accepted that was to demonstrate good value for public money, but also to ensure that contracts were up to date, so we could ensure that we could get good social value from that contract. So following the December Cabinet, we were the recommendations were supported, and we appointed a project team. So we have a specialist team that have the expertise to help us manage a construction projects through RIBAs 5, 6 and 7. And for members that are not familiar with the RIBA stages, RIBA 5 is the build, RIBA 6 is the checking at the end, and RIBA 7 is go live, basically operation. So that team is now in place to support us through that project, through that process. We are also currently, you'll note at item 4.12, we have had substantial assurance from previous audits, and we are currently undertaking auditor currently undertaking a review at the moment. Following the 17th of December Cabinet, we proceeded with the process for procurement, which we have detailed at 5.3. This followed a two-stage procurement approach, and I'm pleased to bring you right up to date this evening in that we went through a tender evaluation process. We had 6 proposals received, and we went through a robust scoring procedure, and we have now got a high scoring bidder, which is Robertson's. They are a tier 1 contractor. We have gone through all the necessary processes to confirm affordability, compliance, the specification and acceptance of the contract terms, and also assurance on deliverability, sorry. You have a standstill period, which is now concluded, and we're just finalising the decision notice and the contract, hopefully within the next few days. So we are working towards an inception meeting very shortly. The relationship with the contractor is of utmost importance to us. We want to work collaboratively. We want them to have a presence, not just, they'll obviously have a presence on site, but a presence with the team, and work collectively to ensure that we're getting best value from a financial perspective, but also from the impact on the site and also the wider town. And that's part of the reason why they were the highest scorers. Sorry, I just lost my point for a minute there. Right, so following the formal appointment of Robinson's, we do have a comprehensive programme of works. We are due to start on site on summer. I'm not going to give you a date this evening because we want to ensure that that inception meeting and that contractor is in place, and then we will update the programme accordingly. We still have the long stop date of completion. When I say completion, spend of the external funding by March 2028. Part of the assessment of the procurement was that they can deliver within that time frame, and they've already been talking to us about added value that they can bring to that contract and ensuring that they meet those time frames accordingly. That's the build, and I won't touch on tonight, but you'll have seen in the December cabinet report all the design revisions as part of that. There's been no changes since then. I'm going to hand over to Lee now, because what's most important is not an empty building, even if they look lovely at the end of it. It's what we're going to do within them to make them successful. So if I can hand over to Lee, and I'm just going to put some nice pictures on the screen behind you and in front of you. So as Lee's talking, it's hopefully some of what he's talking about I can bring to life as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Yes, Lydia's absolutely right. Obviously, as part of the work that we've been doing around the stockyard, as part of the review that was undertaken on the design for the construction phase, there was also an operator review and financial appraisal based on, what we wanted to achieve from the site and our vision for that site moving forward. That was undertaken following some early market engagement that we undertook with the kind of markets and events sector and beyond, who identified essentially that due to the uniqueness and complexity of the site, it would be difficult for any one operator to manage. So that essentially enabled us to go away and take a review as to what we wanted to achieve from the site. Lydia is absolutely right. The construction programme will give us some brand new shiny buildings and some refurb buildings that are in a lot better condition. The key to the success of this programme is how they are filled, managed, delivered, curated and activated moving forward. There was a realisation through the operator review, which assessed numerous different things, but looked at current market status, what the financial sustainability of the site could look like through running profit and loss calculations, as well as what our regulatory and compliance requirements would be once taken on board. That review essentially recommended, and it was agreed by Cabinet in December 2025, that site would come back in-house once the current lease falls away. The existing Southern Stockyard site is essentially split into 2 key areas. As you look at it on a map from a bird's eye view, The right-hand side of the site is currently under lease to Gilstream until June 2027, and then the left-hand site, which is currently the car parking area, is within the council's ownership at this moment in time. So there was an appreciation that once that site came, or once the current lease for that site fell away in June 2027, the council would take it back on within its own responsibility, and therefore we would have the whole southern stockyard site within our ownership and our responsibility from that date moving forward. As part of that, obviously the site that is currently the car park would have 3 new buildings on it. In order for those buildings to be filled, once we got them back from the contractor, that work needs to start now. And therefore there was essentially 4 key work streams that we are currently undertaking with a view to ensuring numerous areas, but essentially on day one of that site being operational and the new buildings being live, they're filled and occupied, because for every day that they're not is a cost to us. That the site is promoted in a manner where from day one it is considered a visitor destination, and that means that we have to start around curating events and markets and trying innovative approaches to that now. So how we can build upon the good work that is already undertaken by working with the current occupier to get more people visiting the site time again, giving them more reasons to come back more often, essentially, as well as developing a comprehensive businesses and marketing plan that was not only driving people to the site from when the new buildings were live, but also during the construction process. One of the key things that we've been working with the construction team on is that site is still operational during the construction program, and to ensure that we are working with the current traders, businesses and stakeholders to minimise the disruption of that construction program for those businesses moving forward. So this work has been ongoing since December, and there are numerous existing work streams underway. I'll quickly go through a 2 or 3 of those, but the report gives you detail, and there are some exempt items that I think we're happy to discuss at the end of the meeting if we need to cover those, if there's any questions relating to those. So the main focus for us at the moment is undertaking a procurement for an experienced events and markets provider. The council are aware that that is not currently something that's within our skill set or expertise internally, so it makes sense to bring in someone to do that on our behalf. We will be going to undertake some early market engagement once the documentation has been signed off procurement. We're hoping to do that in May, June time. Alongside that, there is existing work underway to normalise the existing lease provisions with our tenants, and obviously that's an exempt appendix, so I won't go into detail on that here. But as a broader piece of work around that, that also includes some anchor tenant support. We are very fortunate to have 2 incredibly well-loved local businesses on that site who are, you know, essentially world class at what they do in Round Corner Brewery and Feast and Furious. We want to ensure that we are retaining them on site and also growing them on site, because, you know, they employ local people, they serve local people, and they are brilliant for the local community. By having them on site and people being able to see them grow, you know, it hits several agendas across kind of pride in place, but also in terms of impact on local economy, and more importantly, delivering on our reputation as a food and drink brand. Essentially, you know, they are part of our offer, they are part of our experience, and what we're trying to achieve from the stockyard, they are very much in tune with around that delivery of our promise of being the rural capital of food. So keeping them is key. Alongside that, again, we're also focusing on the marketing and comms. And that's split across kind of 3 areas essentially. There's the marketing, comms and promotion around what currently exists on that site. As Lydia mentioned earlier, you know, there are thousands of farmers that use that facility on a yearly basis. It's now one of the best performing markets in the country. That's something that we should be proud of, and that's something we should shout about. There's also significant traders. You know, some people have been there for 15, 20 years in terms of the market stall traders, and it's about telling their stories. They are people and businesses that we should be proud of and that we should promote to our local people. So there's a whole piece of comms around that as well. There's also the marketing, promotion and comms that we need to undertake to secure tenants for these buildings, and that has to start now. So we are delivering and identifying or pulling together pitch decks. We are in a very fortunate position where we probably have about 5 or 6 active inquiries. The problem we have at the moment is being able to have conversations around when the units will be live, because as Lydia mentioned, the programme will only be cemented in place once we've got Robertson's in a position where they've developed that out and they've given that to us. However, we are already having conversations with Robertson's around what areas could be brought forward to support tenants moving into that site and how that can be managed, but no promises on that at this moment in time. And then thirdly, it's around we've done a whole piece of work around essentially registering the stockyard as a trademark to protect it. That was going on for about a year and a half. I think we got confirmation in January that had been successful. So the stockyard Melton Mowbray is now an officially registered trademark that is owned by Melton Borough Council. And we felt that was key for numerous reasons, but from a legacy perspective as well, with LGR in mind and for numerous other reasons. So moving beyond that, one of the key areas that we've been looking at as well is how we can support one of the key sectors in our area, which is food and drink. And that's at all ranges. You know, we have the likes of Samworth Brothers, who are fantastic, employ loads and loads of people. And we've also got our food producers network, which are, one-man bands right up to 20 employees of food and drink producers. We've got over 65 of those in the area, and this is about how the stockyard can act as a centre of excellence to kind of bring them together and create a wider support ecosystem. One of the things that we're looking to do around that is how we can tie the food producers network into the success of the stockyard and help drive that success. And an idea that we have at the moment is around the concept of a producers pantry. One of the bits of feedback, amongst many that we have received from the food producers network, is one of the issues that they have is there are so many markets they can't get out to them all. There is a barrier to access around their time to sell their wares, so they have to be quite picky about the ones that they choose. So we've developed the concept of the producers pantry, whereby we will work with partners to manage that on their behalf. All they have to do is drop off the goods. We will sell them and manage them on their behalf, and the money will just be dropped straight into their bank, minus a bit of a commission. So that's an idea that we're working on at the moment. We are soon to go out to our food producers network to see what interest there is in that. But again, it's around how we can use the stockyard to give our businesses access to markets they wouldn't otherwise be able to access as well. And when I talk about markets, I don't just mean farmers markets. I mean supporting them with getting stalls elsewhere in the country for weddings, events, numerous other markets, whether that be aisles in supermarkets as well. So, the full gambit here. And there's been notable successes on that to date as well, with members of the Food Producers Network just giving attendance at the stockyard a go, and they've had more business off the back of that as well. So we're seeing the green shoots of kind of excellence around that already, and that's something we want to continue to promote. I think there's probably a lot more that I could go into around that, but I'm happy to take questions on that. I think one of the key areas that we want to do as well is a huge piece of the stockyard is around the events. We have some fantastic events that are put on by numerous different people. We are spending upwards of 2 million on new event infrastructure in the stockyard to, again, support the existing events that are there because they have a loyal customer base, but also attract a new, wider and more diverse range of events that will bring people in from further afield, creating a destination offer. Essentially, we don't want this to be a 1.5 day a week facility. It needs to be a 7-day facility, and the events and the markets are the way that we believe we achieve that. Linked into that as well is obviously the concept of a cultural house. This cultural house will be an indoor space that is hopefully state of the art. It will provide a room, and there are numerous examples of how this is done successfully up and down the country, and we think there is a space for one in Melton for anything from corporate events to product launches, right through to Christmas events or performing arts. We also had conversations with educational facilities around how they can run some of their classes there if we have the right infrastructure and state-of-the-art equipment as well. So the opportunities are boundless. As part of that piece of work, we're going to need to undertake viability assessments, undertake business cases to understand what the cost of that will be. But we believe there are kind of, again, the shoots of a very, very promising proposal there that could give another arm to what the stockyard can deliver and ensure its success and legacy for the people of Melton. Obviously, that ties in very, very heavily and almost a seamless, I won't pat myself on the back too much, but a seamless move into the fact that we are looking, or we have recently submitted an expression of interest for the Town of Culture. That Town of Culture, if successful, will be for 2028, which is where a lot of this will come online. We have the square, the cultural house, and everything else we are trying to achieve around the kind of cultural relevance of the stockyard to Melton as the rural capital of food will provide a central focus to that, as will the wider town centre and the creative sectors that are burgeoning in the area. And we know that because we've been undertaking a piece of work around developing cultural frameworks as well, and they've been received very positively. So again, gives more confidence to what we're trying to achieve here. Just to give an example, if you look at the screen, we've started developing kind of mood boards to help people envisage what we believe the stockyard can be. So the only one that is currently relevant to the stockyard is a top right hand corner where you can see a layout of what it will look like once it's built. These are all current activities that take place across the country elsewhere on the screen, and we believe they're things that the stockyard can also deliver upon. And there will be things that, again, enhance pride in place, ensure financial sustainability, and also kind of create an area where there is something new happening every weekend. So it will give people things to do and things to be proud of. I'm quite happy to, in terms of the kind of, that's where we're moving to with the stockyard. That work is all underway already. There's more work to be done. There's additional work streams in regards to what resource we need to have in place to resource and manage that site. That's forming part of a broader review of kind of our asset service and what we need to have in situ to manage that properly. It's not just about markets and events and the nice to do. This will be an estate at the end of the day. There'll be people paying rent and service charge. We have to make sure that is managed properly. And that is what we are working towards with the assets team at this moment in time to enable that.
Thank you. If I can, sorry, just conclude on the Culture House concept has come from not just the cultural outputs that we have to deliver on behalf of government for the stockyard area, but also as part of the design review that was undertaken in December, we've also brought to the fore two of the buildings which are central to the stockyard, which is where the banqueting suite is. So the funding allows us to make good those two buildings, and they're watertight and that they'll have level floor. What we're now looking at in terms of the business case is how we would develop the internal fit out of that. So as part of the 13.6 million project, it will be a completed site. It's just the internal component of the banqueting suite is something that we're looking at other funding opportunities, whether that's from the private sector and this project's alignment with our inward investment strategy, which you heard about at our previous scrutiny meeting, or through external funding opportunities like the Town of Culture, Arts Council England money, or even heritage funding to bring to life the stories of the stockyard. Just to conclude, there is a very comprehensive risk register that sits behind this project with over 60 risks, which are monitored through our sponsor meetings and overseen by the programme board and also reported through to Rutland. I've picked out the key 4 themes of those risks that are constantly managed, and the planning has now been signed off. Once we're on site, we'll be able to mitigate and address the other elements of the construction risk programme, which will be continually monitored. We have lease and legal risk. They can be covered off in the exempt item if required. Financial and funding risks, the funding is in place. We have a memorandum of understanding with Rutland, and our match funding is primarily based on the sale of the Cattle Market North, which is in the final stages of completion. We are just waiting for the Section 106 to be signed with the applicant. And then the fourth area is the programme and delivery risk, which Lee touched on, which we are constantly evaluating, because to run a programme of this size and scale, and it's with its connectivity, does not just require the right team to build it, it requires the right team to run it and market it and promote it. And I want to end on a positive note in that we've had a much more active and regular presence at the stockyard. So our comms team, and in particular Kate, has been there on a weekly basis, and we also produce a regular newsletter on a monthly basis that helps in terms of keeping the current traders and visitors in the area up to date with progress. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. I just wanted to say, I mean, I understand the point about shiny new buildings, but when I'm having my regular Friday coffee at Coffee 123, other coffee shops and cafes in Melton are available. In the stockyard tomorrow, yeah, a nice shiny building will be very welcome. Less drafty and fewer pigeons flying around in the rafters. Okay, I'm going to open the debate. Can I just, and I forgot to say this right at the beginning, we do have an exempt item, which is the Appendix A, and I would ask members not to refer to that in open session. If anyone wants to have discussion around that here tonight, we will have to actually go into exempt session. So we will at some point. Okay, but until we do that, please refrain from referring to that appendix. Okay, right, open to Councillor Chubb.
Thank you both very much, and it's very reassuring to hear all the hard work that's going into the stockyard. I think we all recognise the importance of the cattle market. It is unique, it's USB for Melton Mowbray. It links into the rural capital of food, and it's something we should be collectively proud of. But also, I think the importance to the rural community, as Councillor Webster, Councillor Holmes will know, and as I've used it as well, it's really important. And I think we need to safeguard it for the rural economy. But I think what is posed here complements all of the activities, particularly around the visitors and the connection with the food that is produced. I know, Lydia, that we meet on a regular basis to discuss the projects, and I'm very reassured to hear that the work that is ongoing, particularly as we've talked about procurement, legal and finance all being tied in together. Again, the combined work streams that are happening there, commitment to delivery. You've got the programme board and the programme, which is equally important, and the risk register. So I'm really pleased to hear about that. I'm also very pleased to hear about Tier 1 contractor, and I think that's really important for the audience here. That is the top grade. And for them to be interested in a project like this is really important. And it means, particularly in the current climate where there is a lot of risk, and we'll come on to that in a minute, it is reassuring again to hear the engagement of them, and through quite a robust procurement process, because that's equally challenging. But I think it will be helpful to highlight some of the areas that are perhaps of concern, and that is through no fault of your own, but we all understand that in the global situation we are faced now, particularly in the development world, where we are looking at significant increased costs, it's around contingency and how you're managing that. I know comments have been made in the past and raised by colleagues about drainage, and again, how that is being addressed. But I think it's been very helpful for you to explain the wider picture. I mean, I think there's been confusion around, I call it the cultural hub, but how that is not competing with the theatre. It is actually complementing what you are doing in the wider project, and how it can be used for events. That's, again, be it for the rural community or the food community. I'm also reassured to hear about the marketing and letting. Again, I think it would just be helpful just that you've got the robust risk assessment, and I think there are opportunities to tie in potential interest, because there aren't. These are units the market, often the smaller producers can't produce. So there should be a strong interest. However, they are facing their own challenges, rising costs, as we've seen with food. So again, interesting just to hear a few comments around that. But I think, again, you are onto that. And I'm reassured, again, the activities around the events, because this is going to be really important, how that is managed and how this is promoted. Footfall is really important, but it ties into everything else that is ongoing in terms of promoting a cultural hub, marketing and letting. So, sorry, it's a number of points, but it would be just helpful to hear that, particularly around the risks and the economic climate we're facing, how you're dealing with them. But thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your positive comments. If I can deal with them in order, would you mind if I went into a bit more detail in the closed session regarding the contingency, please? Yes, in terms of we are very aware of the significant price rises. We have got a fixed price contract with the contractor, and we have confidence that through the mechanism of the procurement, that they will meet the quality and the requirements of the funding bid whilst meeting the cost increases. And I will go in more around how we've mitigated that in the closed session, please. In relation to the cultural hub, absolutely complementary to, it is not a theatre. We don't have the ability to put racked seating in, for example, and some of the components of how we've addressed that has been really engaging with our local community, organisations, but also our creative sector, our creative industries. So we've had we've had 2, and we've got 1 scheduled in for those meetings, and for them to continue to develop and grow. That has introduced them to what the current plans are, but really enabled them to engage with the process, hopefully learning from our colleagues from earlier about engaging the members of the public and those that have the most interest in this site, particularly from a cultural perspective, into how they can shape what's going to go into that culture house concept. And they've been really proactive in that, and actually given us some real food for thought. So what maybe the theatre does and doesn't offer them currently, and how there is still room for more creative opportunities for Melton and the surrounding area, how it can be a hub for those creative industries and cultural organisations and community organisations to come together, and how do we meet their requirements through that. Alongside that, we've also been working with Loughborough College. So we are endeavouring to ensure that there is, whatever the outcome in relation to the theatre, that we retain a learning offer in the town centre. That doesn't exclude us working with other educational providers, and we've also reached out to De Montfort University as well, and they've been particularly supportive of our ambition for Town of Culture. In terms of the marketing and potential interest, yes, risks are absolutely at the forefront and are a part of that risk register. I think the importance of our food and drink network is absolutely imperative to that. And if I can draw your attention to what I said at the beginning, in terms of how this project is interconnected. So we have a regeneration team. We have an economic development officer that is well connected with business support. We are regularly talking to business support organisations alongside our food and drink network. So we're abreast of the challenges that are facing businesses, and how do we address that? And some of the feedback that we've had through the expertise that we've employed is that just providing a food and drink hub or a building is not going to cut it. You need that wraparound support. So whether that's support for marketing, whether that's support for access to different markets, like we've discussed around the, what's the name of the pantry? The Producers Pantry, thank you. So really adapting our offer around what we're hearing from the businesses. But yeah, the rising costs significant, and it is on the risk register. And then finally, that events and footfall. This is not a one-trick pony. This is not just about food and drink. It is at the heart of it. It needs to work alongside the livestock market. It needs to be true to its core in terms of the rural capital of food, but it's part of our culture. It's part of our town centre. How does it work alongside that? How does it complement existing events? How does it generate footfall, not just for the stockyard itself, but for the town centre, and also, I'm going to say, for the wider borough as well? So through the food and drink network, it's how do we create those tours? And we've started to do that. One of the examples in the report is a company called Hidden Food Tours that's starting to do a food tour specifically around the stockyard. But I know that that business is looking to expand and develop that, and maybe the stockyard is a hub, and then they can go out and do wider food tours of some of our other excellent food and drink businesses across the borough and even beyond through local government reorganisation. It is already, and I think we need to be mindful of this, and this is something that Gilstream have reminded me on several occasions, it is already a hub for events and activity and already attracts numerous farmers. We already have the farmers' health checks there. We want to build and develop and continue that success into the future, and that can only be achieved not just working on our own, but in partnership with Gilstream, with other agricultural and food and drink businesses, and also with the creative industries and cultural sector.
Councillor Webster.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, I think I worked at the cattle market 33 years. I was market manager the last 3 years I was there. And our aim was to make it a destination spot. And obviously we started years ago doing this sort of thing. I think it's a great project you got forward. Got good Robertson's, say tier 1. I think Councillor Chubb mentioned that. That's good. And the branding, I think branding is very good. Lee was mentioned, obviously, a destination. That's what when I was there, we wanted it to be a destination place. But since I've left there, I'm on the town estate a bit as well now. I know Lydia touched on it earlier. We don't want to take the town centre away from where it is. I think we need to include it somehow, like you've been saying, tours and such like. So yeah, I think it is a good project, but I think we need to look at the town as well in conjunction with it. I don't know if Lee wants to come in there, but yeah, it's a great venture, great project. Yeah, 100% behind it.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The success of this will be dictated by how it impacts the town centre and the wider borough, and that's exactly what we're hoping to do by driving footfall into the area as a destination more broadly as a town. Some ways that we can achieve that, and part of the reasons why we wanted to take this back in-house is so we had more control over the ways that we could do that. But for example, one of the key deliverables that we will have from any procurement for events and markets is working with the town estate, working with the bid to ensure that nothing is done as a silo, to ensure that events don't compete, they're coordinated, and to ensure that if for whatever reason, as we have experienced in previous markets or Christmases, that for whatever reason, if an event can't go ahead in the town centre, we can easily move it to the stockyard because it's got a covered area to ensure that it continues to move ahead. There are again examples where that's been done to date. We very much want to carry that forward and ensure that regardless of what is happening in either the town or the stockyard, both are benefiting from that activity.
Can I just add to that briefly? So a couple of things, that this project is not in isolation. So we have also, as part of the Town of Culture proposals, established as Place Partnership, which includes Melton Mowbray Town Estate, the Business Improvement District, along with other businesses and stakeholders in the area. And the importance of the stockyard is not just about that area and the town centre. It's actually working with that food and drink network for it to become a regional hub. You know, we're really trying, particularly through the relationship with Rutland, to not look at it just beyond Melton as well. So we become, when you come into Melton and you see the signs for rural capital of food, it really means that, you know, it's not, and this is the first phase. You know, we've got this significant funding, but I don't want members or the public or our stakeholders to think, well, that's it, we've ticked a box, we've done that now. You know, we're always looking at how we can develop this further. So part of the work of the regeneration team has been to develop a cultural strategy, to develop a heritage strategy. So how can we continue to develop and grow the town alongside the future of the stockyard?
Councillor Thwaites.
Well, and unfortunately, well, not fortunately, it's sort of stolen some of the thunder on the question, which was originally a lot of the criticism for the project when it first started was the segregation or the potential to segregate the two parts of the town at the cost of the town centre. So it was really the same sort of question to sort of say, what are the actions over the last sort of couple of years to change that, to make sure that when we get there in 28, it is, and people don't just visit either the stockyard or they don't just visit the town centre sort of thing, and the two will never match, because increased footfall is great, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it bleeds into the other part of the area. And one of the key ones is always the distance, which isn't great, but it's not an easy transition from the stockyard to the town centre. Is there any other initiatives that we may maybe need to look at or already being looked at to increase that?
So as I mentioned earlier, we have developed a cultural strategy. That's not just about having a piece of paper on a shelf. That's about how do we look at future opportunities to secure investment and funding into the town and into the borough. Alongside that, we've also developed a heritage investment strategy that sits and complements our inward investment strategy. Again, that's looking at improvements to the town in particular, because that has also enabled the development of a conservation area appraisal. Again, that's a really key component for future heritage funding into the place. We've worked really closely as a team with our place marketing organisation to support tourism campaigns across Leicestershire. So one of the campaigns that has been supported by Visit Leicester and Leicestershire has been Taste the Place. So Melton has been part of a wider initiative to support food tourism across Leicestershire, with Melton really being at the heart of that. But I think one of the most exciting components is its alignment with our inward investment strategy. So we're not just looking at funding from the public sector for future initiatives, we're looking at how we can use the stockyard and the investment into that place to drive private sector investment. So we last year, and we're going again this year, is to a forum called UK Reef, which attracts investors and developers, and using this as a hook to attract further funding into the area. So if we want thousands more visitors to come to the area, where are they going to stay? So we need to think about how do we attract investment into hotels and accommodation alongside, you know, future development, and that complements Melton as a good place not just to visit but to live and to work. And you'll have heard at last Scrutiny about the investment into places to work as well, so with the investment of Sangaban in particular into the area.
Councillor Gordon.
Thank you. Cheers, love. Yes, I think this is going really well and everything is going through so smoothly. You're doing a brilliant job. I've just got one question, and this is on page 176, and it's 10.2. And it's the second, I'm going to read from the second part of it, where it's got external legal support is being provided by Trowers and Hamlins to draft the relevant amendments to reflect the council's specific requirements. There will be ongoing liaison with the council's internal legal team to ensure that this aligns with other elements of the project. And I've read this out because it just makes me wonder, why can't our internal team, legal team, take on the whole thing if they have to go back over stuff to make sure it's aligned? Do we really need to have Trowers and Hamlins?
So we've appointed Trowers Hamlins for robustness to support with ensuring that we have a robust contract in place with a tier 1 contract. This is a significant project and a significant contract. The legal team have been exceptionally supportive, and this is a check and balance that ensures that we followed the correct procurement processes. We had a number of clarification questions through the procurement process, and that Trowers has done an assessment to ensure that that process has been run fairly, and I'm confident as the decision maker and the person that has to sign that contract that we've got that check and balance in place. And it was the recommendation of our legal team to have that contract reviewed by an external legal company. And the other point I will add is some of the leases are complex, and we need to ensure that we have that robust framework in place, and that external legal advice makes sure that we're not at risk as a council before we enter into any of those contracts or leases.
Got you. Yeah, thank you.
Cliff?
Right, I do think Councillor
it's
Holmes
all
has
right,
been
I
waving
just
her
want to
hand
go into-
for a while before me.
Onto the yellow papers, that's it.
Okay, are you happy to?
Yeah,
Shall I
carry
go?
on.
Okay, right then. Okay. Just a couple of things. The stakeholders meetings I've been at as well, and they've been really positive. My reflection about those meetings is that a key part of this a key part of the engagement is around getting the messaging right, particularly around the culture house, because the unfortunate thing, and it has been mentioned, the unfortunate thing about the way that's evolved is because of the theatre not getting that funding. And then, of course, we had the decision taken by Loughborough. So at that first meeting I was at, there was understandable a lot of agitation and anger in the room that the culture house was being developed, a lot of misunderstanding about why the money couldn't be given to the theatre, go back to the theatre. There was a lot of confusion around the messaging of that. But by the end of the session and at the subsequent meeting, there was actually a lot of energy and positivity in the room. But I'd say most people, not all, but most people there had shifted and were starting to get on board with it. And actually at the last meeting, I don't know how Lydia feels, but I was really enthused by the the engagement and the ideas that were coming forward, and the people there from our community that were really buying into it and going, oh yeah, well, it could be this, it could be that, and what about this idea, and this is what we want out of it. And so it's just taught me that it's so important now at this stage of the project to get that messaging out there to the community. And I just wondered, are there plans to I don't know, engage in social media campaigns, or I'm just imagining. I think it's Tim, isn't it? He's like the project. He's one of the consultants. I mean, when he talks, you can't fail to agree with sort of everything he says. And he could sell ice to the Eskimos, and just sort of getting enthusiastic people involved in front of a camera out there, sort of taking the local people on a journey as this evolves, as the building work starts, to kind of see it taking shape. And kind of combating some of that negative messaging we've had about the stockyard development over the years, about what it is and why, and all the rest of it. The second thing, and it was only when you said about working with, sorry, my brain fog's kicking in, places to work you mentioned, and about this helping to promote Melton as a place for employers. because I was at a meeting at Latham House today, and one of the partners there was reflecting that 20 years ago, recruitment at Latham House wasn't an issue, and actually doctors were really keen and falling over themselves to come and work at Latham House and wanting to move to come to Melton because Melton was an attractive place. And the feedback they're getting, one of the issues they're getting with recruitment is that nobody really wants to come to Melton anymore. And there's been a kind of over the last 20 years, it's sort of slipped down in people's priorities of places to come and live and work. And that's one of the contributing factors that's impacting healthcare. And I just wondered if it's worth having a conversation with Latham House around the health benefits of what's going on in terms of the cultural developments and good food and nutrition and all of that, and the added benefits to the health of Melton through the development of this. And maybe there's some, I don't know, some synergy there. I don't know. I just thought I'd raise it.
So we have a comprehensive marketing and social media campaign being planned. It's a combination of both internal and external resource. So we have a dedicated communications officer working on the project, and she works alongside some of the expertise that we've brought in from particularly from the hospitality and food and drink industry expertise. That is geared around, so we have a new website as an early look at it on the screen at the moment. This is going live imminently as a place not just for visitors but to attract those food and drink producers and the creative industries too as well. But the majority of the campaign is based around social media and those positive messages going out alongside is a multimedia approach, so having some print and having a presence at the site as well. You talked about the messaging around the Culture House. I think we need to continue to learn and to take that learning from those community events and ensure that we're continuing to be positive, but also recognise any learning from that or opportunities to improve. And lastly, I love the idea around Latham House. Definitely need to reach out to them, and probably for another meeting, but we have been invited to be part of Good Food Leicestershire and their ambition to be part of a sustainable food place achieving gold status, and we're hoping to have their kind of their launch event at the stockyard in the autumn of this year. So making sure that we're aligning to those ambitions of sustainable food, not just for local food producers, well, promotion of local food producers, but also the health benefits. I think the other component of that project is around waste as well. So how do we address waste in terms of food? So lots of connection, but through working in partnership with our colleagues at Leicestershire County Council.
Hand raised, Councillor Holmes. No, what I will do is, I mean, I've got a couple of points to raise on the main report, and I'll ask if any of the
Can I ask then about the heritage of the? You've mentioned heritage, etc. When we saw one of these, the slides, this is why I don't know how I can do it. One of the slides, it showed the market house as you go in. That is going to stay, is it? Well, it has to because it's been listed, and the wall on the outside. Yeah, the first one is you come to. That's it, yeah, and the wall on the outside. That, yeah, right. Well, we'll then go into this here, yeah, and then down further down. That's all been listed. It was had to be listed some time ago, but I'll talk about it later. Thank you.
Councillor Chubb.
just want to reiterate the point about Traz Hamlin, and probably to explain from a personal perspective. They are one of the top lawyers, and in terms of procurement, are highly regarded. And the procurement laws and the challenges therein can be quite complex, and it is essential that you do have them reviewed. And having been at position where things have been challenged, it can be very costly. So that there is a rationale, and it's something which I was pleased to hear about. And also, I think just the points that Councillor Webster has made and Councillor Thwaites has made is the links. It is really important that the cattle market is not seen or developed in isolation. I don't think that is the case, as you've talked about all of the links. But again, Melton is quite unique. There are many town centres which are struggling, and I think you will find that the footfall connection is good, and it could be better. All of that is linked into how you can capture that opportunity. But it is really, we don't take our eye off the ball on that, and everybody benefits from this investment, not just the cattle market. So these are just other points that I had. Thank you.
Gordon.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it's on page 179 and it's number 3, and it's financial and funding risks. It's got mitigation includes preparation of a back-to-back agreement with RCC, but I would have thought that this would have been done beforehand as you went along. It just seems unusual that you've left it this long to get the agreements done.
Sorry, I should have clarified that. We do have a back-to-back agreement already in place with Rutland County Council. It was whether or not we needed to have a refreshed agreement because of the extension from government. But since me writing this report, I've been assured by Rutland that there's no changes to it. So that risk has been mitigated.
Are there any other points not on the appendix that members wish to raise? We will get to the appendix, Councillor Holmes. If not, I just want to raise a couple of things. I mean, one is, and I'm harking back to another stream of activity, which is when we were looking at the town centre design guide, and I remember when we had the consultants, or whoever they were, who came and gave us some guidance and produced some materials, and one of the discussions there was about the link between the stockyard and the town, and frankly, the Scolford Road, Norman Way crossroads are not the most attractive crossing point in Melton. And I think there was some recognition that if you want an effective link, some work needs to be done there. Well, there's no provision for that at the moment, is there? And so I'll register the concern. I think we can talk about linking the stockyard and the town centre, but whilst the actual route is unattractive as it currently is, and frankly quite unpleasant to cross, we're going to struggle to actually make that link. So I think somewhere, either with this council or its successors, that remains an outstanding item to be resolved. So it's really a statement rather than a question. I can just see the nods of, yeah, we've got no money. And I'll accept that. The second point, which I was quite interested in, this food producers pantry idea, because again, without any scientific study, my perception, not just in Melton, but in many other places, is that the number of traders attending events, whether they're markets or particular events, have certainly diminished over the years. I think part of that has been the internet coming in and actually being a trading space for small businesses, rather than, you know, driving around the country with their caravan to go to different markets. So I just wonder, you mentioned it in connection with food, but I wonder whether it's worth exploring other small businesses who might be interested in having that sort. It's a bit like having a bit of a trade stand with a slight charge to do it. I think it would be worth exploring, looking at other sorts of businesses in this area and beyond, again, to improve the offer within our markets and at the stockyard.
Yeah, thank you. No, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We've started off with the food and drinks. It naturally links with the stockyard, the food producers network, and our claim for rural capital of food. If that's successful, there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't look to the wider kind of creative industry. Some of the active interest that we've had for stalls and for units aren't necessarily just food and drink related. They're a wider creative sector that kind of supports the food and drink economy. So, anything from package design right through to marketing, comms, websites, we're talking about the full ecosystem here, not just your food and drink. It's the entirety of the sector. So I think you're absolutely right. There's absolutely no reason why we couldn't look into crafts as well when we're talking about kind of things that are made locally and sold locally. I think at the moment because of the links that we have developed with the food producers network and I think we had 150 food producers listed on our email database. This is something that we are able to get up and running fairly quickly, but there's absolutely merit in looking at other sectors as well.
Well, further comments on the non-restricted report? Looks around quickly. No. Therefore, need to go to the formal process to go into closed session. And I'll read the precise wording. It is recommended that the press and public be excluded during the consideration of the following item of business in accordance with Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, bracket access to information, exempt information, close brackets, under paragraph 3. So that's the resolution before you. Can I have a proposer for that, please? Councillor Holmes and a seconder, Councillor Gordon. Can therefore have a vote to agree the exclusion. Those in favour? Thank you. Just wait a few moments to get confirmation. Okay, if I can just call the meeting to order briefly. Thank you. We're back in open session now, but we've now concluded the discussion and debate around the report on the stockyard project. The final item on the agenda is any other urgent business. There is none. So I declare the meeting closed. Thank you all for your attendance. And those of you who put up for scrutiny for the next municipal year, I look forward to seeing you in whatever capacity that might be.